Welcome to the Pelican Brief with your host, David Tapman.
Welcome to the Pelican Brief. I am your host, David Tapman. We have a very special guest in studio with us today, Frogs Talbert. He's running for House District 64, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yeah, and so thank you so much for being here today, and welcome to the Pelican Brief.
Thank you for the opportunity. Every time we're able to get our message out, it's a positive. So I love being here to talk to y'all.
Well, good, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and we know you're campaigning. We also appreciate you offering yourself for public service. It's as somebody who served for 12 years in an elected position, I can tell you, it's people don't always appreciate you, but you feel good about the work that you do when you help people. So, that's a big part of it. So our audience probably doesn't know you very well. Why don't you take this opportunity and introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Garry Talbert. I got the nickname Frog. I remember, it was probably about a little over 8 years ago. I'm sitting in a consultant's office, and he's got this sign that says Garry Frog Talbert. And I'm like, I am not putting my nickname on this sign. And he said, you don't have enough money not to put your nickname on that sign. I said, what do you mean? He says, nobody knows who Garry Talbert is in Watson, but people know who Frog is. Okay. So, for us not to put your nickname on the sign is going to cost you a bunch of money. And I'm thinking to myself, I've already had this discussion with my wife about how much am I willing to put in this campaign. So I said, okay, Frog it is. So that's how we ended up with, Frog. And then had no idea that when I go to the Secretary of State's office to fill out, or the Registrar of Voters as it was, or Clerk of Court as it was, that you can only have one nickname. And since my name is James Garrett Talbert, Garry is technically a nickname.
Right. Frog
is a nickname. But you can only have one nickname. So the ballot says Garry Frog Talbert. And so it's always been a joke that, I got a couple councilmen that call Garry Frog. So look, I've served on the Livingston Parish Council for 8 years. I've served on the Livingston Parish Executive Committee, Republican Executive Committee for 8 years. I am 2 years into my service on the State Central Committee Republican State Central Committee representing District 13B. Prior to that, I had served on the Livingston Parish Recreation District 2. And that's kind of what got me into public service to begin with. A long time ago, I served on the East Baptist Parish Metropolitan Airport Commission when I was a much younger man, a long time ago. But Jimmy McCoy was the councilman in Watson, and he came to me and said, look, I've got a spot open on the rec board. We're collecting 15 mills of taxes up there, and these guys keep saving the money. They're putting it in the bank because one day they think they're going to accumulate enough money and remodel the ballpark, expand it, put some more fields. And he said, what they don't understand is time is running out on this, original tax. And when it comes up for renewal, we're going to have done nothing. Mm-hmm. Have a bunch of money in the bank, really not expanded the ballpark. People aren't going to see where their tax dollars are being spent. There's no way this renewal will be approved. So would you serve? I said, yeah, I'm willing to serve. I'll go in there and find out. And look, for like 7-8 months, I felt like I was just beating my head against the wall. I'm like, look, I don't know about you. Every car I've ever owned, for the most part, I financed my house. I don't finance my groceries, but, major purchases you tend to finance. Mm-hmm. And trying to explain to people about, inflation and how tax revenue is going to continue to grow as more people move to the area, that, ultimately in, 10 years or on this bond, you're really paying less money, percentage-wise versus your income, and trying to explain how bonds work in government. And finally, one of the guys says, look, you think you can get this done, show us how to get it done. Show us how to expand the ballpark. 30 days later, I showed up at the meeting with the parish bond guy, Jim Ryan, showed up with an engineer with a rendering of the ballpark. We had projected revenues from from the tax over the life of the, as it presented based on, current numbers. So we looked at, if we bond this much money, this is what we're going to have to pay it back with. And we've got we've got X left for the operation of the ballpark. And they like, oh, okay, good. We'll move forward. But that was my first, really venture into government and trying to do something for the community. And look, now there's the Live Oak Ballpark's got 8, 10, 12 fields out there.
Right.
Turf, so it's an economic driver for the community. We have tournaments every weekend out there. I remember the first tournament we had after we opened the new fourplex is Mr. Patel at the Subway called me and said, what went on at the ballpark this weekend? I said, man, we had a tournament. He goes, would you please let me know in the future when you have a tournament? He said, I ran out of stuff. My wife and I had to go work. So back then, we had Linda's Fried Chicken, we had a Subway, there wasn't a lot in Watson, and so when people would need a break and go into town,
in between games,
it overwhelmed the restaurants that were there. And and so I would call Mr. Patel every time. I'm like, look, we got a tournament coming. He's like, thank you. And he would staff up, and change. But that just showed me how, little things like that can really benefit a community. And now, from the time I moved to Watson to what's happened now is just amazing, and the growth out there and the businesses that have come and shoot, you don't have to go to Baton Rouge to eat anymore. You don't have to ride to Denham or Central. You can actually eat in Watson. It's really nice. And so, all that is how I got into government. Yeah. After seeing the process and seeing how complicated it was at times and the roadblocks that were thrown up on different occasions, I felt that there was a need for just kind of simplifying the way government operates and representing your district in such a manner that, moved it forward and created economic opportunity for people within the district and people that wanted to come into the district. And so that's kind of how I got into public service to begin with.
So what made you want to run for the Louisiana House of Representatives?
Okay, so let's just look at what's happening in the state right now. I've served 8 years on the council, and I'm looking at Ms. Hodges, who represented District 64, is term limited. And I'm looking at the state, and I'm looking at this Southern renaissance that's going on throughout the South after COVID, and we're not participating. And you say, why are we not participating? Well, our tax code is terrible. I sit on the Liberty Parish Council, and businesses come to us and like, we need an ITEP. We need a tax break to make, to invest, in your community. And I'm like, so basically we give you a tax break we're buying your business. And if we don't, then you're going to go look somewhere else. Well, why are you looking somewhere else? Well, there's a better workforce somewhere else, or there's a better tax code, or something like that. So, in looking at what's going on, our tax code is ridiculous. It's convoluted. I've got a friend that she makes hats, and she's got this little logo, and she had some country and western star, wear her hat on a People magazine shoot, and now she's blowing up. Well, guess what? Every time she mails a hat to some other parish, it's a separate form she's got to file to remit those taxes. We had a constitutional amendment a while back to try to bring all the collection within the state. Makes perfect business sense, but school boards all over the state rejected it. They fought against it because they didn't want to give up their little fiefdom. But from a business point of view, why do I want to file 64 different tax returns? It just makes sense that we file one sales tax return and cover the whole deal.
Well, it's a little at Frog. It's bigger than that, because not only does the young lady who sells the hat have to filled out that form, but once you start filling out that form, you have to continue to report zero or you get fined.
Right. So she's got to do it for, once you move into an area, you've got to file that form every month.
And I also wanted to tell you, I was president of the school board when that came up, and we did not fight it because we really feel like well, our sheriff collects the taxes,
Right.
so we're a little
It's a
different.
little bit different. In Livingston Parish, the school board's a sales tax collector.
And so it's really one of those things where, but you're right. I mean, people fight with what they don't know. I think their biggest fear is that whether state government will get the money back out the way that they're supposed to. But I have a good friend, and he sometimes listens, and his wife. They own a wholesale distributor, and they sell into. And it's more than just the 64 parishes because they sell into municipalities. It might have different tax codes. They have to fill out those 70-something forms every month, even though they may only sell into a small part of them.
You're creating almost one person that has a job that generates zero income.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? You're creating burden on business.
And with software now today, you think that we could figure that out, right?
And look, let's just talk about the word about the state giving back. So I file my sales tax return at my truck stop. I file it online. So I go on the Louisiana TAP website.
Right.
I file my stuff. Then I go on parish e-file. Ironically, like I'll file my return on the 9th. I'll fill out the paperwork on the 19th, set it up to pay on the 20th on everything. Do the same thing on e-file, parish e-file. The state's going to draft my money like the next day, but the parish typically doesn't sweep every day. You know what I'm talking about? They've got to go request the money from parish e-file. So consequently, I mean, you might file on the 20th in the parish, and it might not sweep for 3 or 4 or 5 days later. It's just the state's going to get you your money, but I mean, I understand, kind of why, but that is a basic, tenet of conservatism and less government is to create a situation where you deal with one group.
Yep.
It's going to help collections for these parishes. I mean, think about it. Box stores are, people, if they don't have to go to a box store or go somewhere, if they can buy it online, they're going to buy it online to ensure that you're getting your proper collections, the revenue back into your community. One collector distributing the money is going to be way more efficient than, because who knows if Amazon is remitting properly in Livingston Parish. But if they're going to the state knows where it was bought. They know where the money's going to go. It's just going to be a more efficient operation.
I'll share something else because I was involved in those conversations because I represent wholesalers. That's one of the clients that we represent, and there's even a bigger issue, and that is that if there's an operator out there that's not remitting Livingston Parish taxes, it's hard for Livingston Parish to go get them if there's a lot of effort in it. Not because Livingston Parish doesn't issue the effort, but they don't have the resources.
Right.
Whereas the state of Louisiana has the resources to really have a long reach and be able to go out and hold people accountable. And frankly, if they don't hold themselves accountable, the state can pretty much shut them down. So it really does. It always made sense to me. But then again, I'm just one vote in this crazy place. So let's pretend. So let's do this little thing that we do because you brought up taxes. Obviously, it's a big issue for people. Let's pretend that last night you were elected to the state representative and you start work. What are the 2 or 3 things that you feel like as a state representative you're going to go out and lead on or be a significant part of?
Okay, so let's just talk about the 3 big issues. We talk about out-migration, all the other things. So tort reform, tax reform, and education reform. Think about it. K through 3, we teach them to read. 4 through 12, we teach them to learn. They read to learn.
Right.
Bessie voted last month to figure out how not to make a kid pass a LEAP test and still get a diploma. That's crazy. And I hear they're going to reevaluate in a couple of weeks, and it's probably going to pass again. So we're going to start giving kids a diploma based on the fact that we think they can pass the 7th grade LEAP test. We're moving ourselves backwards. So education reform is very important. A kid should not suffer based on his zip code. And look at District 64. You got kids going to Walker High School. You got kids going to Denham Springs High School. You got kids going to Live Oak High School. Great schools. You got kids going to Northeast, and you've got a few kids going to Central High. You know what I'm talking about? So you look, there are 4 haves and 1 have not. that district represents. So you've got to broaden your knowledge. I'm gonna tell you, when back in December, January, when I'm talking about making this evaluation on this run, I'm thinking about Livingston Parish schools. I've spent hours, and I'm gonna drop Kelly Bachner has spent hours talking to me about education. Mm-hmm. It is a way more complex issue than I ever imagined. Mm-hmm. And so education reform is important because we need, you think about how schools are graded, and if I'm a principal, the more kids I have on the college track, the more points I get. So the better my school grade is. But we got kids on the college track that don't go to college. And then we got kids on the college track to go to college for 1 year, and then half of those don't come back for the second year. So we're sending a whole group of kids into the workforce that didn't learn a vocation type skill. We need to figure out how to get workplace education into our high schools so that we're not, not everybody's college material. But let me tell you something. Look, I'm in LSU. I never finished graduating from LSU. I made very high on my ACT score. I had a books and tuition to MIT. I had the ability to get a tremendous education. I left LSU to go work in a plant, Ethel Corporation, because back in 1982, they were paying $13.01 an hour with a 50-cent and $1 shift differential. That was a lot of money back then. I'd have got a degree from LSU. It had taken me 5 years to get to that pay scale. So, I went to work at a plant. That was great. The problem is I just had to go plant that made tetraethyl lead, which was outlawed, and then they ceased production. And so, if I'd have gone to Exxon, it'd have been a different story. But we need to change. We need to get kids on that path. Tort reform. I own 5 gas trucks that run the road every day. It costs me $200,000 before the first truck leaves the yard. It's ridiculous. Mr. Talbert, why is that? Because they got guys standing on trucks saying, if an 18-wheeler bumps you, call me, I'm going to get you paid. Mm-hmm. And so it creates an environment that's not business friendly. Then that passes on to your home, your personal deal, because your car insurance goes up, your homeowner's insurance goes up, all these different issues.
Price of gas goes up.
Everything goes up. But ultimately, there's another part of that too, is that without migration, the pool of people paying in shrinks. So the exposure is greater, and so the rates have to be adjusted up. Look, tort reform is part of the problem and needs to be addressed. Me and my business partner just recently sold a house in Miramar Beach. We had the option there to buy homeowners, wind or hurricane, and flood. I live north of I-10, I-12, in Denham Springs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't really need hurricane insurance at my house. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm talking about?
Wind and hail.
Wind insurance. I really don't need that. Mm-hmm. If people would think about what they pay for that insurance and escrowed that money, they would come out way ahead putting their own roof on their house.
No doubt about it.
But it is what it is. There needs to be some change in how insurance is looked at in the state. Prescription periods need to be adjusted. We kind of are an outlier when you look at other southern states on how some of that stuff. So tort reform and insurance reform is an issue. Yeah. Tax reform. We talked about the sales tax issue. There was the Freedom Caucus sent out a little questionnaire, 4 questions on it. Question 4 was, would you guarantee to vote to eliminate personal income tax? Ideally, when tax reform comes about, if you look at southern states surrounding us, Texas doesn't have it, Florida doesn't have it, Arkansas started the phase out. I think it's a 13 or 14-year phase out on personal income tax. I couldn't sign it. I couldn't guarantee that I would vote to eliminate personal income tax. Tax reform is what's important. Looking at all the taxes with respect to business, personal, everything. Let's look at tax reform and put a whole package together. So I wouldn't commit to one silver bullet, because one silver bullet's not going to solve the problem. Go back to Stelling. Go back to the elimination.
I was here. Yeah.
Go back to the elimination of the taxes associated with that. Almost bankrupt this state. So you can't just say, I'm going to vote to eliminate personal income tax, because there are so many other things associated with it that have to be considered. So consequently, that's got to happen. Well, then you start looking at statutory and constitutional expenditures. Think about it. There's an item on there. There are items that come up to be amended to the Constitution, because guess what? The governor cannot veto an item put forth as a constitutional amendment. So sometimes, to get around a governor veto, we put it on the ballot as a constitutional amendment. Our Constitution is a conglomeration of laws, not a Bill of Rights with a structured government. We need to amend our Constitution or start over, scrap it. There's tons of ways. The Pelican Institute has done a tremendous study on that. I think they actually have a proposal that is really kind of an amendment to the Constitution that basically takes all the laws that are within the Constitution and puts them in a pile over here and says, these are still the laws, but they're not protected anymore. And then comes out with an outline of government, a Bill of Rights, a structured government. And then you can go, what was a mandated expenditure in 1973? It didn't necessarily need to have priority in 2023.
Right.
Because ultimately, if you want to cut the budget, where are you going to go? You're going to higher ed and healthcare. Those are really the only issues that aren't really protected by the Constitution. So consequently, think about it. My kid just graduated from Nichols. You look at he graduated in December. You look at his bill. My tuition bill that Nichols would send me last year. There's a line for tuition, there's a line for books, and then you double that, and there are all these fees. Well, those fees are based or exist because we eliminated Stelly, and then we had to go cut expenditures. Yeah. So guess what? You're still paying. It's just limited to those that go
shell game.
Yeah. So. That needs to happen.
Yeah.
But I just wouldn't sign the.
I got you.
Ultimately, I hope personal income tax is eliminated.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you that that's the end all for me. The whole package is what's important, because the whole package is going to be what, keeps people here, what stops, the out migration that we currently have, that brings business in. If you have a business-friendly tax environment with an educated workforce, you don't have to bribe them to come here. You don't have to bribe them to invest. They want to come invest. And so I think that's the approach that you've got to have in government. That's what I want to go to Baton Rouge and do. Look, Livingston Parish is a bedroom community. We got a little industry. We don't have a lot of industry. People live there and work elsewhere. I think the person, the front runner in the governor's race, talks about, it's nice to bring in new business. Let's see what we can do for the businesses here to make it beneficial without having to give them an ITEP, a tax break. They should want to invest. ExxonMobil should want to invest in Baton Rouge because they've been partners forever. It's a great environment for them to do business, and it's tax friendly. Yeah. And there's an educated workforce for them to tap into.
And frankly, I'm not really quite sure where else they go, right? It's harder and harder. There's a lot of states that have cracked down on the environmental aspects of it. I know that there are lots of states that don't want any more oil and gas production. There are certainly many, many states out there that would never let carbon capture be a part of their mindset. So Louisiana has sort of always been ripe for that. But I want to tell you, Frog, my son, who spent his whole life in Louisiana with me. He's a junior, David Jr. Great education, goes to LSU, gets his mechanical engineering degree, and to get the job he wanted, because he didn't want to work in oil and gas. He has no issue with oil and gas. He's kind of like his philosophy is drill, baby, drill, but he didn't want to be an oil and gas engineer. Right. He wanted to be in aerospace or some other area. He now works in Newport News, Virginia on a Navy contract. And so here we spent all this money educating this child, and he leaves. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to be here, but there aren't jobs, or there aren't enough jobs for a young kid coming out of college to come in and just go take one of those jobs, you know? And so you're right. I mean, it's challenging, and the out-migration is just absolutely crazy. Then look on the other side. Look on the retirement side. How many retirees do you know? Because I know a lot of them, that when they get to retirement, they leave the state because there are there are better tax advantages to living in other states. And then, frankly, there's some other issues like crime, transportation, and other things that they say, I'm going to go live somewhere else because I can. So they take all that money that they made all those years in Louisiana, and they go spend them in another state.
Somewhere else. I mean, look. So like I said, we had a house in Florida for over 20 years. Go look at what's happening in that state. Guess what? That's not coming out of Tallahassee. That's coming at the local level. Mm-hmm. Those decisions are being made at the local level. You know, those decisions are being made what's best for our community, and it's happening. You know, it's not controlled by the governor's office. The one positive that will come out of a constitutional convention or amendment, or however you want to address it, is right now the way the government's structured. All the power comes out of the fourth floor. And ultimately the legislature, you know, fights that situation. The governor produces a budget. They give it to the representatives and say, look, Mr. Talbert, you approve this. This is what I'm going to do for your district. Well, guess what? My people paid that money in. They should get it anyway. You don't need to bribe me with their money. Mm-hmm. And then I go back after it's all done. I said, look what I did for you. I got you this roundabout. It was your money that got on the roundabout. Mm-hmm. You know, government is the way it's structured right now is crazy. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's just kind of top heavy the way the Constitution allows for the state to operate. And hopefully, you know, we're going to have a Republican governor, a conservative Republican governor. We're going to have a conservative supermajority in the House. We're going to have a conservative supermajority in the Senate. There have been businessmen that have spent a lot of money and spent a lot of years to ensure that this happens. And I've heard people say, well, if we do a constitutional convention, we need to have different people. We've spent a ton of money and a ton of effort to get a conservative legislature. Why would we want to go have another election and let guys like Mark Zuckerberg or George Soros come in and buy elections?
Yep.
They have the ability to do that.
Or they are doing it.
And if they know that the Constitution of the state of Louisiana is up for sale, they will spend a ton.
Yeah.
So if we're going to do it, let's do it with the conservatives that we're putting in office now. That's, right. I mean, because there's been that question.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and look, I've answered tons of questionnaires during this election.
Oh, I know.
You know, and look, I've really, you know, my lobby questionnaire, I answered some questions that I knew would get me dinged, you know, on points. They asked about the expansion of Medicare, or expansion of Medicaid. Excuse me. I'm like, as long as it's 90-10, who cares? Mm-hmm. I said, as long as it's a 90-10 deal, the expansion is great, because guess what's happening? People go to the doctor instead of waiting for 5:30 and the doctor office closed and go to the emergency room,
which is 10 times more expensive.
Look at Mississippi.
Right.
Look at rural hospitals in Mississippi and see what's happening. They didn't expand Medicaid. They're struggling staying open because of the flood of the emergency room and the cost of providing mm-hmm. services. So, look, there are benefits to some things that technically aren't, you know.
Oh, no doubt about it. And healthcare is one of those, you know, Freudian basic elements of life. I mean, if you're, you know, it's clearly something. Look at some of the. It's hard to make enough money to be able to pay your rent and your food prices these days. Try to go out and buy insurance, right? And if you can't buy insurance, what does that mean? You're left by the side. That's crazy, you know, and it is. But so let's move on to the next phase, and that is tell us how you're going to win this race.
You know, Ryan Cross is running my campaign. Ryan's a great guy. I met him through a mutual friend about 6 years ago, and he helped me with my last council race, and he's kind of helped me through this whole last council session, you know, last 4 years, and he's running my race. Look, we are talking about the issues. We're staying positive about the issues. and just trying to get the information out. You know, look, I'm a gruff guy. I'm a business guy. I'm not a politician. You know, I'm a business guy who sees an opportunity to make our state better for my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and my children. You know, I mean, so, and some of it's personal. Some of it's personal. I mean, heck, I cannot sustain my business model as it exists now if insurance continues to go up at the rate it's going up. I mean, I'm already running additional costs because of the national administration's attack on energy. You know, diesel fuel is at probably close to an all-time high. I mean, look, it's getting to the point now I feel like I need to put an armed guard in my fuel truck because when they roll out of the refinery, it's amazing how valuable they are right now. And so, you know, it's just an issue. But, you know, we're trying to stay positive. We're putting the issues out. And that's all I know that we can do. Yeah. You know, talk about the things that are going on in this state that need to be fixed to solve problems. Yeah. We have a great state. We have tons of resources. We've got great people. Think about it. We've got the Mississippi River. You know what I'm talking about? We got great opportunity for fishing and hunting and all, you know, all the things that you could want. We've got a metropolitan cities. Now I know we've got 3 of the large, you know, highest crime rated cities in the country, but you know, those things can be addressed.
They can be.
And I hate to say it and I hate to pick on people, but go look at the list and see who's governing those cities and why is it, you know? And so it's pretty obvious Democratic controlled cities have crime problems. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, people ought to look at the cities that don't have crime problems and understand why that exists. Hopefully, you know, when the front runner for governor is elected, mm-hmm. I think he has an intent to call a special session to address crime. Mm-hmm. And I think the person that's going to be the insurance commissioner wants to have a special session to address insurance. Mm-hmm. So I think whoever's elected to the legislature out of District 64, hopefully it's me, better have their game face on and they better hit the ground running and ready to move forward because I think you're going to be busy. I think next year is going to be busy year for the legislature.
Yeah, they'll be. You'll go right from election to organizational session, to special session, to regular session, and it's a long session. This is the regular general jurisdiction one. And then, frankly, if there is any efforts to do anything with taxes, as you had suggested, that would have to also be in a special session because it wouldn't be allowed in any other session unless it was included in a call.
Right. So basically, you're looking at a situation that, you know, you need to be prepared to work. And I'm going to be honest with you. If my child, if Jacoby wouldn't have graduated last December, I have brought my kids into my business to prepare me for this, you know, for this deal. I have made adjustments to my lifestyle to allow myself to campaign more. You know, I'm here now because I got kids back at the house looking after the, you know, the business, and so that's kind of how we're moving forward. Yeah. But it's stay positive. Yeah. Get your message out, knock some doors. You know, visit people, take every opportunity that affords you to get your message. So when you asked, I'm like, heck yeah. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm coming.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I wanted to tell you, I am a Nicholls State graduate, and my wife is a Nicholls State graduate, and my middle daughter is a Nicholls State graduate.
Well, so Jacoby played football at Live Oak and was recruited. And I'll be honest, he was recruited pretty heavily at Southern Miss, and he really struggled with ACT. Okay. Now, you know, so he ended up with a super score. You know, we concentrated, got 2 parts of the ACT done, and then got those, and then concentrated on one particular section, got that scored, and you know, concentrated. And so he was a late qualifier. I mean, and so he ended up going to Nicholls. And he had a year's eligibility left. And he said, I'm ready to go to work. I'm like, why? Yeah. I mean, look, I'm paying you got a car, you got an apartment, you got spending money. all you got to do is go to class and football.
Yeah.
He just was ready.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, come on, come
Yeah.
back to work. And that was our agreement.
Well, it was a great place for me to go to college, and then of course my wife is from Thibodaux, which our listeners know, and I'm glad I went because I would not have met my wife and had my 3 beautiful children. So this is the part of it where we kind of close up, but we give you the opportunity to kind of any last sort of pitches you want to make to our audience, any ask for their vote, give us your contact information so that they can maybe go online and give you money or whatever else you need.
I think my wife struggles with this election. I think she wants me to win. She thinks I'll do great things. I think at the same time she knows that the time that I'm going to spend doing this is going to conflict with what we could be doing.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's a struggle to put forth all this time, but it's something that I'm up for the challenge. My family's up for the challenge. I think I can do great things in Baton Rouge for Livingston Parish and for the state as a whole. I think what's amazing is the lack of business approach that's implied in government. I remember my first meeting after I was elected to Livingston Parish Council. I hadn't even been sworn in. They brought a limited group of us at times so we didn't, get too many people together. And we sat down and we're talking, and I'm asking these questions, and the finance director finally looked at me and said, Frog, this isn't your business, this is government. Government's about 65% efficient. And I said, what do you mean? Government operates at about 65% efficiency. Quit trying to act like it's your business. And when I left that meeting, I'm going to tell you what was on my mind. If I sent a performer to the bank and said, look, this is what I want to do, I need to borrow this money, but I'm only going to operate about 65% efficiency. And so I might struggle paying the note back. They're going to kick me on down the road.
That's right.
You know what I'm talking about? So what I thought is, I'm like, there is juice here. We privatize something. There's 15% for government, 15% for the business sector. You know what I'm talking about? We can provide more services for less money. You got to be in the administration to make those changes.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
You do.
But that is the big thing about government. Government is not efficient. I mean, we've got the monolith of DOTD. We've got the monolith of health and hospitals. Those things, I mean, they cut $1 billion out of health and hospitals, said we'll figure out where we're cutting it later. Because there's so much money to waste, they could just cut money and it's going to be okay. I don't remember what the number was. It was some strong number that happened.
Yeah,
but
I remember the $100 million cut.
It was $100 million. Okay, so they're going to cut $100 million out of the budget, and it's like, oh, we'll figure it out. Well, if you can cut $100 million out of the Department of Health's budget, and we're going to still make the Department of Health function, there's a lot of waste in there. And I think that's the biggest problem is we don't bring a business approach to government.
Sure.
And that's why I'm here. I think that there's an opportunity. I listen to, so Rick Edmonds is running for a Senate district.
I know
right
Rick
next
very
to
well,
mine.
yeah.
And so we go to all these forums together. And I love Rick because Rick says, we've been playing defense for 8 years, and I can't wait to get on offense. And I think there's a golden opportunity for us to really address some issues that exist. Look at Mississippi. Mississippi has elected a Republican governor for the 3 consecutive Republican governors in a row to serve out their terms. And guess what? Those policies that they have instituted have working because people in Louisiana can say at least we're not Mississippi because what? Mississippi kicking our butt right now.
Yeah,
in
right.
some areas. So vote Garry Talbert. I'm number 61 on the ballot. I'm 61 years old. There's got to be some omen in that deal. This district represents mainly the Watson area. There's some North Denham. There's some areas of Walker in the northwest corner of Walker that's addressed. And then the Pride, Cheneyville,
Right.
Baywood area of East Baton Rouge. There's 2 boxes over there. And so, I will be able to hit the ground running. I've got legislative experience at the council solving problems. That's what we did. And I'm looking forward to going to the legislature and solving those problems that exist within the state. And I think the issues we talked about are what's most important to move Louisiana forward. Look, my cell number is 225-933-6456, GaryTalbert.org. Check me out. I'm on Facebook is Garry Frog Talbert.
Okay, and what we'll do is we'll put all that up on the screen for those who watch, and for those who don't, we'll put it in the show notes of the show. So I appreciate you again offering yourself for public service, continued public service, because you are at local government, and I appreciate it because it is service, and that's the key thing that I think a lot of people don't think about. But I also appreciate you scooting over from Livingston Parish to East Baton Rouge to come downtown to our studio to do this show. So thanks again for being a guest.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah,
appreciate
you.
Have a great day.
So that is our show. I am David Tapman. This is the Pelican Brief. You can follow us on all of the major podcasting platforms. We are on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. You can also follow us on social media. Our handle on all social media platforms is at Pelican Brief 225. You can watch us on YouTube at The Pelican Brief 225, or you can email us at thepelicanbrief225@gmail.com. And until next time, we are the Pelican Brief.
The Pelican Brief is an off-script production.